Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I'm making this video to explain settings and how to use my invite-only script auto chat patterns ultimate. This is not a new script. I've already created this some time ago, back in May. But the thing is, it has gone through a lot of changes and like several updates, like more than 10 updates so far, and it has created, there's a lot of change differences from the original version published and the current version. So that's why I thought of making a new video. There's also another video earlier, but it's a bit outdated since due to all these changes. So let's get started. So the simple things, as before, once you load the script, you'll see following things in the chat, starting with the patterns and the chat patterns, and open trade stats here, close trade stats here, and the timer window here. So if you look at the settings here, you can see that following are the available patterns. You can enable and disable them individually, or you can also enable them and disable them in general. For example, if you uncheck charts, so channels, you'll all the types of channels are disabled. Even though it's enabled here, it will all be disabled. So for any pattern to be visible, it has to be checked here, as in the sub in the individual option as well as in the main option. Right, and also, and coming to the other parts of it, once the patterns are formed, it will also give some suggestions on how to trade them. So each patterns comes with the patterns here are bidirectional. It can you can trade them long, or you can also trade them short, and it's based on the breakout direction most of the times. For example, if you move back to this point here, so the pattern, the contracting triangle pattern has formed just now, but it hasn't broken out any side. So there is no suggestion on whether to trade long or short. Also, if you look at the pattern here, it's only the entry prices are highlighted. Both long and short directions are, it's not it's dimmed, so that you will not see that very clearly. That's because there is no trade direction at. So what happens, and if the price moves up and breaks out this range, then you'll get a signal to go long. Or if the price moves down and hit this point, then you will get a signal to go short. So let's go a little bit, few bars, and see what happens. Yeah, so it hit the short signal here, short entry point. So the short signal is active. If you see that, long trade is completely blurred now because it's not relevant anymore. Only the short trade is blurred, and short trade is highlighted. And you can see that the box also moved a bit, because this box accesses two things. One is entry for one is the like a range box, like whether to go short or long based on the breakout, or it also acts as entry and stop once the trade is confirmed. So the trade is confirmed, it means that the entry is here, so you can enter anytime because already hit the entry. And you can place your targets for these two levels anywhere, and the stop loss will be this point, this particular location. And also you can see some statistics on when this kind of pattern happened in the past, how many of them hit target one and how many of them hit target two. So let's say the contracting triangle here, if you look at this short side, only 28% hit um, target one. So 28% hit target one, but the risk reward ratio is 2, so it's not as bad as what we think it is. But the target 2 is only 4.76% time it hit target 2. The risk reward is 3.32. So that means that if you wait for target 2, most likely you're going to fail, and it's not worth the risk you're taking. Right, and similarly, but if you look at the long side here for contracting triangle, it's much better. The range, the win rate for target one is much better, and but the risk reward is similar to that of short. Right, and that's about how the trade signals are generated for patterns. And any pattern you see here, they follow the same thing, like either they can go short or long based on which side it will break out first. So let's remove the get out of the replay mode now. So once you get out of the replay mode, see that this expanding pattern here, right? So if you go back to the settings here, and see that you can set target for expanding and contracting type separately, like for contracting patterns, this is the stop range. Stop range is bit higher, means the stop distance is bit higher, but the entry is lower than that of expanding patterns, and the targets are kind of similar here for both of them. So that's because entry, why entry is smaller for this is because if you look at this, the breakout, if you keep 2.36%, it will become like this, it will come like this, it will start here, the box will be too big, and it may not be appropriate as well, because the breakout in a contracting pattern, the breakout should only be happening on um, the immediate pivots, and as soon as you move out of the immediate pivot here or immediate pivot here, you should be able to go on either long or short direction. Otherwise it will be too late to enter on a contracting pattern. So that's why the default ratios are like this, but you can experiment a bit. You can probably reduce this as well and see how it will fold, or you can reduce this one and this one as well, target one and target two ratios as well, and see how it will impact the trades. Yeah, any changes you make here, for example, I'll make it as 0.05 here, and I'll also make this as 0.382 and 0.618. So if you look at this, any changes you make, it's going to impact things on the chart. 1 minute, I think I made a mistake. Let's see. Yeah, no, it's right. It's all right. It's 382 and 618. So if you open the detailed mode here, the right now it's a selective mode, means only the patterns which are in trade are shown. It's only downtrend channel which is present here, that's being shown here. So but if you select detailed, it will show all the patterns and all the stats. You can see how it has impacted contracting triangle. So if you look at contracting triangle here, so the risk reward for target one has increased, right? So and also target two has increased as well, and but the overall win rate has reduced. But we'll have to find out whether it's which one will be more profitable. So higher risk, higher win rate doesn't always mean it's more profitable, because it can be of very low risk reward. So you have to consider both when you are considering your profitability of your trading strategy, right? I'll reset this for now. So, and also in these details, right, if you forward on these, you get more details on what they are, and you can study these further. And similarly here as well, in the open trade stats, it will show all the details of the trades which are open. It will have some details such as entry and stop and target levels for both directions, and it highlights the levels where the next target is and where the next stop is. And it will also show what type of pattern it is, the age and size of the patterns, and whether whether the trade is active or waiting for entry, or and target certain target reached and all the status, and also whether the patterns have done a retest or not. So all these things are will be available, all the status will be available here. It's not really required, but it will be handy to look in here, when you're trading on a chart directly. And let's get into the other few settings on the back of this. So if you go here, the number of pivots says that how many pivots are required to form a pattern. For example, if you enable the zigzag lines, it will show that these patterns are like five pivot patterns, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 creates a pattern. And you can actually select a six pivot pattern. That means that will generate less number of patterns. Let's say right now you have 164 pattern overall, So if you select 6, it will be much less than that. You can see that now. So it is 75. So it's almost reduced to half, more than half. That's how it impacts. So 5 is kind of okay, but if you want to be very picky about the trades you are doing, so you can also go for 6. Theme is the thing, but it will decide what color combination which is used for these lines and labels and all. So if you're using a light background, use the light. Otherwise, if you're using a dark background, just keep it as is. Suppress overlap. If you disable it, it will show the patterns which are overlapping. It can get quite confusing sometimes if there are multiple patterns within and all these things. So hence, if you want to keep the chart clear on such kind of things, maybe use suppress overlap. Otherwise, if you're okay, like if there are too many patterns on the chart, and you have a confidence that you can filter manually and pick them whatever is more appropriate, then disable this option, and you'll be able to see all the patterns. So extreme patterns, ignore patterns. In the sense, extreme patterns are those where, like, very steep. For example, you can say that this is a wedge because this is forming all the pivots. Technically, it may be a wedge pattern, but it's kind of a steep, and it doesn't really give that confidence that this is a wedge pattern. It may be just downtrend. In this case, it actually went back, but like, you never know. It may be just a downtrend. It may go further down, especially when the price action is very this steep. Chances of going down is much higher. So if you want to ignore such kind of patterns, you can select that option. Right, use real time bar. So here, if you see that, to form the pattern, it actually used the last bar, means confirmed bars only. But if you use real time bar, what happens is, it can give a signal when the pattern is formed, as soon as the pattern is formed. The problem with this is, it may lead to repainting, because let's say it reached this high and created a pattern and send a signal, but soon what may happen is this particular candle, it may go further up. It means that this pattern is not valid anymore. So you get an alert that there is a pattern, but if you open the chart, there is no pattern. So this is called kind of repainting. This happens if you are using a latest candle, which is unconfirmed candle for your calculations. But having said that, if you're using only confirmed pattern, it may happen that the price movement is very extreme, and you may miss the entry conditions and all these things. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but I would say that, if you're using automated trading, do not use the real-time bar. That's more appropriate, and has more benefit, has more benefits than harm. Okay, so these filters, they're just added for experimental purposes. You don't need to use them. It just means that, whether if you make it as, if you mark this as up, if you select this option and select as up, then means that select only those patterns where the last forward direction is up. That I've added just to study the probabilities of, if the direction is up, how many of them will reach target one and target two on the upside, or if it is down, how many of them will reach down, and all this kind of things. But you don't need to use them. If you want to study further, you can use them to study further, but do not use them for trade unless you are completely sure about it. Right, and zigzag settings are nothing but, as you see that, right, these are the zigzag lines. Zigzags are basic building blocks for any trading, any pattern based trading scanners. So these are like, if you use this zigzags with lower length, it means that you will find smaller patterns, more of smaller patterns. If you use the lens with higher zigzag length, you'll find patterns with the longer patterns, more longer patterns. Since we have suppressed overlap, you may not see much of longer patterns, the bigger patterns. But if you disable that, if you look at this is a very big pattern, right? So this, you won't see that if you just using zigzag 8. This may be a 23 22 or 34 a 21 or 34 zigzag lengths ideally, I think. Okay, similarly, depth means that how many pivots you need to search. For example, if you say 8, zigzag 8, it will search last 55 pivots for patterns. So more search, if you increase this length, it will search more patterns. It will find more patterns. But the problem is it will slow down your overall script. These configurations are kind of optimized to not to slow down the patterns, not to slow down the script too much, but also find optimal number of patterns. So unless you want to experiment, you don't really need to change anything here. Okay, we already discussed about this. You can set your targets and entries and stops for different types here. For example, contracting patterns. You can set a different entry in target and then stop loss levels. These are all fib ratios. The fib ratios are calculated based on the first point and then the last point. So it actually it gets the distance, overall distance from here to here, the max domain, and then based on that it creates this levels based on this fib ratios on this particular length, right? And you can experiment on different values here. For example, as and when you change this, it will also impact the result here, and hence you'll get different outcomes. We already discussed about this. The displays, you don't want to see these tables, you can disable them, or you can place them in different locations in your chart. And also you can select different text size for each of these tables based on how do you want it to be, or based on your screen size, etc. The closed stats, and there's you can right now it's in a percentage mode by default. You can also go for number mode. It means that it shows how many number of patterns it actually how many number of patterns it success reached these stages and happened, etc., rather than the percentage, particular percentage, right? And compact and detailed, as I mentioned before, compact means it will only show total stats. It will not show anything else. If you select detailed or selective, it means detailed means it will show everything. Selective means it will only show the patterns which are on chart and which are currently in trade. Right? Show zigzag lines, which I already mentioned. If you uncheck this, it will not show these zigzag lines. Pattern label, similarly, if you check this option, it will show a pattern label saying that this is a downtrend channel or this is a contracting triangle, etc. So you can already see that here. Otherwise, if you uncheck this, the label will not be shown. Clear old patterns, already mentioned. I think if you uncheck this, then it will show everything, all the old patterns. For example, okay, yeah, all the old patterns formed, but it will be too much of messy, too many lines. If you don't want to see them, just uncheck this option, or by default it is checked. By default this option is checked, so if you don't want to if you want to see them, uncheck this option. But that's okay to, otherwise it's okay. If you really want to see how the patterns are performed, it's a better place to look at is the closed stats rather than looking at the pattern lines in the chart. The last thing is that alerts. Since these scripts are built on alert function, not the alert condition, you will not get this option of setting particular alerts based on the alert condition. Like, usually what happens is when you select alert condition, you get this message box, but here that doesn't happen. Let's see this one. Actually, you can't see that, you can get this condition as well. If that happens, what you need to do is you need to save the chart and then refresh this button. And when you do that, you'll get this you'll get this alert option. I will not do this now because if I do that, my video will be stopped. But anyway, you can try that, and if you are still having an issue, you can contact me on Telegram, and I'll try to help you. And similarly, like, this will act as a replacement for that box. What you can do is you can select the alerts which you want. Let's say if you want only new pattern alert, just select this one and unselect all the other options, and then set your alarm alert. so that you'll only get this particular alert. And that's all. I think you can also backtest. Okay, that's all. I think that we are running out of time. Thanks very much. Please let me know if you have any questions.